everyone, it's Affy, and today I'm here to do my August wrap up. I'm never sure which month we're in, so I'm assuming this is August. We're just gonna go with August. So I read 10 books in August, the most I've read so far this year. So I'm really excited about that. I've just been, even this month, I've just been kind of going really quickly through books. I don't know what it is. I was going through a slump through most of kind of the early summer. So now I've kind of gotten out of that slump and I'm just kind of whipping through books like nobody's business. So I read quite a few books last month. So not going to talk too much. I'm just going to hop right in. So the first book I read in August was Dare to Love a Duke. This is by Eva Leigh. So this is a story about Lucia and Thomas, and Lucia is the proprietress of a sex club, and Thomas happens to be the son of a duke. He comes to the sex club with a friend, and he's just kind of interested in it, but he doesn't want to take part. But then he sees Lucia. They're wearing masks, of course. Women had to wear masks back then, especially for places like that. So he can't see her, but he's just automatically taken by her and just stays to talk to her. And so for an entire year, he shows up every week just to sit there and talk with her. Nothing else. He's just that interested in her. And then his father dies and he becomes the Duke, and he realizes that now that he's going to be part of Parliament, he can't continue going to this sex club because if somebody finds out, that could screw up his career. So he decides, you know what, I can only go one last time to see Lucia, and he asks her, would you want to sleep with me since this is the last time that I'm ever going to be here? And so she agrees, and they take off their masks and meet each other face to face for the first time, and sparks fly, even more than they already had. He leaves, and she basically is like, I'm going to put this behind me, and it was what it was. So later she goes to give the owner of the club his cut of the money. And it turns out that the owner of the club is now Thomas. His father happened to be the owner of the club, the old Duke. And he obviously had kept it a secret. And so when she shows up and Thomas is there, things get a little weird. Tom is quite a rogue and a bit of a flirt, but in a good way. He's really sweet and funny. I really like that Parliament was an aspect of the story. Usually in a lot of these books, even though they're dukes and earls and marquesses, they never show them actually being part of Parliament. It actually showing that aspect of like his job essentially was very cool to me. I kind of liked it. They're that couple that is constantly eye fucking each other from across the room. So much so that you want to beg them to get a room. They're that couple. Like their chemistry is off the charts. And that was one of the things I really, really liked about this book. It was palpable. You could feel their chemistry. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. And yeah, Dare to Love a Duke. And this was my first Eva Leigh. All of these authors are first time reads for me. So the next book that I read in August was And Then He Kissed Her. This is by Laura Lee Girk, or Gerke. I don't really know which one. This book is about Emma and Harry. Emma is the secretary for Harry, and she writes her own books, and she hopes to have him published because he's a publisher, and she has tried 3 times to get him to read a book that she's written in hopes that he'll publish it. But he just kind of keeps being dismissive about this book. He tosses it to the side after reading like a few paragraphs and doesn't bother, paying any attention to it after that. He's just kind of like, yeah, I read it and it just wasn't, up to par. So one day she realizes he hasn't actually been reading her books at all. And it's on her 25th birthday. She realizes she hates her job. And so she leaves a message and doesn't show up back to work the next Monday. Obviously, Harry is freaking out. She's the best secretary he's ever had, and everything starts to fall apart without her. So she decides she's going to go to his competitor and see if his competitor will publish the book for her. Instead, the competitor decides to give her a column in his newspaper. Her column becomes like the new talk of the town. She becomes an overnight success, which really, really irritates Harry. So then he buys that publishing company, and now he's her boss again. He was very dismissive of her in the beginning. He didn't notice her until she was gone. And then once he was interested in her, he was kind of pushy and just constantly in her face. And that irritated me. Again, I like the story, but I couldn't like him very much. I tried. I really did. But he just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I really, really liked Emma. She was bold enough to quit her job at a time where, working as a woman it was not easy to find jobs as a woman. So I really liked Emma. I thought that she was a great character. But like I said, Harry was a bit of a dick. So other than that, this was a really good book. I gave it 3.5 stars. Again, Harry kind of ruined it a little bit for me. Otherwise, I would have given it 4 stars. But I would say still give it a try. Emma is worth it. The storyline is worth it. Yeah. Just ignore Harry. Just ignore him. Otherwise, it's a great book. So the next book that I read in August was by Maya Rodale. This is Duchess by Design. This is the first book in one of her series. So this book is about Brandon and Adeline. Brandon and Adeline meet each other in the front of a hotel, like a hotel lobby, sorry. They meet each other at a hotel lobby and sparks fly. They have this cute conversation. It's a meet cute, basically. And he's just taken by her. And when they get off the elevator on the same floor, she goes into her room and he assumes that she is a patron of the hotel. She is not. She's actually a dressmaker, and she is there to make a dress for a young lady who is staying at the hotel. So he obviously thinks that she's that woman, and he somehow finds her, and they go on a walk in Central Park, but she somehow doesn't clarify to him that she's not who he thinks she is. So he ends up going to a ball and meeting the woman whose name he thinks is Adeline, but isn't. He kind of sees this woman and is like, wait a minute, you're not the person that I was talking to. Who are you? And so he realizes she was the wrong person and he's not sure how else to find her. So he is able to find her at the shop that she works at. And he's following her down the street one day, talking to her, and they stop in front of the shop that she works at, and her manager sees her talking to him and sacks her. She basically fires her and throws her out because she assumes that she's talking to this guy. She must be some kind of harlot. She basically sacks her, and now she's without a job. She's upset at him because she feels like he's the one that caused this. And so she has to figure out how to get a new job. And he feels so bad. He wants to help her find new work. And it's basically their love story after that point. They're really cute together. I like this couple. It was a bit insta-lovey. but it was still okay. I really liked Adeline. She's very sharp, witty, self-sufficient. She figures out how to get back on her feet. Brandon is a lovesick fool. Like, he's just head over heels for her, and she's a bit more level-headed than he is, thankfully. Otherwise they would have gotten themselves into a lot of trouble. This was okay. Although there was a very funny scene about birds and his mother wearing a giant hat full of birds and just terrifying this young girl who's obsessed with birds. It seems ridiculous, but it's a hilarious scene, and I loved it. It made me laugh so hard. So, it was definitely funny as well. I give this book 3.5 stars. I would say definitely give it a try. I'm going to try and kind of continue this series and see how the rest of the books are. But yeah, this was really cute. Duchess by Design. The next book that I read in August was by Kate Bateman. This is This Earl of Mine. This is the Bow Street Bachelor series. I really, really like this book. This was hard to put down. I thoroughly enjoyed myself with this one. So we have Georgie and Ben. Georgie is a young woman who is basically running her father's company, and she has a cousin who is trying to get his grubby little hands on her money, and he's doing everything he can, including trying to put the two of them, in a compromising situation, just so that, she'll be ruined and be forced to marry him. But she decides that she needs to marry anyone, to get herself out of this situation. She decides that she wants to marry a convict, specifically one that is set to be killed. Unfortunately, there aren't any, and so they tell her, you can marry this man who is set to be sent to Australia. He will not be around. You will have a husband somewhere out in the world, and you can say whatever it is you want to say. So she marries this guy, makes sure that he signs away any rights to her money, and gives him about 500 pounds, and decides, all right, She goes to a ball 2 weeks later to find her convict husband hanging out at a ball, just there, as if he's a normal member of the peerage, because he is, and he also happens to be a Bow Street runner. So he works for essentially what was the police at the time. She realizes that she is kind of in a pickle and they are legally married. So they have to figure out what they're going to do about their situation. Obviously, the premise is a little funny. Just the fact that she went all the way to a prison to marry someone. That's a really wonky premise for a story. I love that Georgie was the boss of her dad's company. Like, we love a girl boss any day of the week, of course. So yeah, this was a good one. I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. This Earl of Mine. And I like her writing style. I like Kate Bateman's style of writing. It's very easy to digest. So the next book I read was The Beast of Beswick by Amelie Howard. This book is about Nathaniel, who goes by Thane, and Astrid. And Nathaniel, this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So Nathaniel has a scar, and he basically thinks that he's ugly and no one wants him. So Astrid is trying to prevent her sister from having to marry this weird dude, this weird guy, and she decides that she's willing to marry Thane in an effort to help protect her sister. I can't remember exactly why. Basically, it's Thane being very hot and cold, and and being very horny all the time. It was a weird it was a weird book. He was constantly complaining that, she didn't love him and didn't care about him, and then he'd be like, well, maybe she does. And then he'd be like, but nobody can love me, but maybe she does. And then, why would anyone want me? But maybe she does want me. This was a very annoying book. He was obnoxious, and I get it. He has a lot of self-esteem issues around his face and feeling ugly and unwanted. I did like Astrid. She has got a whiplash tongue. Like, she told somebody off, and it was a perfect scene. I loved it. I loved it so much. She really, really put this guy in his place. And I love that scene. While he was definitely very off and on, hot and cold, he was constantly thinking about screwing Astrid. Like, it was just him wanting to screw her the entirety of the book, but feeling like she loved him and then didn't love him and then loved him and then didn't love him. So I just didn't know what to make of this book. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. The half because I like Astrid, not because I thought the book was that great. So the next book I read was An Inconvenient Duke. This is Anna Harrington. So in this book we have Marcus and Danielle. Marcus has just come back from war, and he is basically given a dukedom, and he hates it. He would prefer to be back at war. Like, he hates the idea of being part of the peerage. So he's just kind of grumpy and is ignoring all the balls and things like that, trying to just have his life feel normal again. And so he's at a ball one day and he sees Danielle, and she happened to be best friends with his sister. His sister has passed away 2 years ago while he was away at war. And he, for whatever reason, feels like something might have happened with her death. He feels like there's more to the story than she fell off of a horse and died. So he starts asking Danielle questions, and Danielle starts freaking out a little bit. So he's like, okay, something must be going on here. Well, he decides to take it into his own hands to start looking into his sister's death and figuring out if she really did have an accident or if she was murdered. Danielle kind of decides to help him in this case. But Danielle herself happens to be working for an agency called the Nightingale Agency. Well, they're not an agency. They just call themselves the Nightingales. And she basically helps women who are abused or kidnapped or taken into sex work to help them get out of it and help them escape those lives. And so she's kind of doing her own thing on the side while trying to help him find out what happened to his sister, whether she was murdered or not. This was, it had a lot of intrigue. I did like the murder mystery, although at times it felt like it kind of overshadowed the story. It didn't take over it completely, but at times it felt like, okay, I don't really care about this right now. I want to hear more about the couple. I want to hear more about them. I gave this 3 stars. Not much else to say about it, but it was good. The next book that I read was The Raven Prince. This is by Elizabeth Hoyt. This book is about Edward and Anna. So Anna needs a job. Her husband has died. It's just her and her mother-in-law, and they have no money. They're basically they're down to pences. They're down to the pence. And so she finds a job working for Edward. He's an earl. And he basically is immediately taken with her. And so he's having a hard time having her work for him as his secretary. One day, Anna comes across a woman who has been hurt and is lying on the side of the road, and she takes her home and cares for her. It turns out this woman is a sex worker, and when her sister comes to pick her up, she basically tells Anna, anything you want or need, I can help you get it. At this point, Anna is really starting to be into Edward, and so she decides what she wants is to go to London while he's in town there and get a chance to sleep with him. While she's in town trying to sleep with him, they actually have sex incognito because they do it at a brothel, I believe, and she's wearing a mask, and so he doesn't realize it's her. And when he does, he's obviously very upset, but realizes that that was what he'd wanted all along. A very interesting premise and story, and it was just different. It was different. And then Edward was a bit of a child. He was kind of a petulant child. He would throw fits sometimes and just toss stuff around the room when he was upset, and for some reason he didn't piss me off as much as some of the other heroes in some of the other books. This was a good one. I ended up giving it 4 stars. The Raven Prince. So the next book I read was by Galen Foley. This is My Wicked Marquess. And I think this has a step back. This book is about Daphne and Max. And Max basically, he's in the military and he's coming back and wants to marry. And he basically gets his secretary to give him a list of all the eligible young women that he feels are a good fit and who have no smears to their reputation. Like, he gets a list, and Daphne is on this list. And she has basically turned down 3 proposals now. So he's a little intrigued, and he decides to spy on her a little bit, figure out a little more about her. And when he does, he obviously realizes he likes her. And so he goes to her father and basically tells her father, I want to marry her. And her dad is just like, oh, thank God, I need somebody to marry my daughter. She keeps turning everybody down. And so they basically make a plan that she'll marry Max. And when she finds out, she is livid. She is attracted to Max. So there's an attraction there and a bit of chemistry there. But she's upset at the fact that they didn't give her a chance, whether to say yes or no. He decides, okay, fine, I will court you. To make things a little better, I will court you. How about that? This one was okay. I did not love Daphne. She spent a lot of time fighting with him. And like, at first I understood, why she was upset, but she just kind of continued to make it a thing and continue to pressure him and continue to just kind of get in his face. It made me start to wonder, like, why he even liked her. This one was just okay. At least for me, it was just okay. I ended up giving this one, I gave this one 3 stars. Because, like I said, I wasn't really into the heroine, and by the middle of the book, I was just kind of like, why is he into her? I still did have 2 quotes from the book that I liked, and I will just read them really quickly. She says, "No one has ever loved me," and he says, "My love, there is a first time for everything." So the next book that I read was Suzanne Enoch. This is Taming Wraith, and I have read Suzanne Enoch before, so she was this was a book of already read author. But this was Taming Wraith, and obviously Wraith is our hero, and then our heroine is Felicity. And Wraith is playing a game and wins this property called Fortin Hall. and he's excited. He's thinking, I'm finally making something of myself. His family always tells him, he hasn't made anything of himself because all he does is travel. So he goes to Fortin Hall only to find that half of the building has collapsed and someone's living there. So as he's walking the grounds, he gets knocked over the head with a pipe and wakes up to find Felicity and her little sister May staring down at him. And he realizes that the person who he won the land from and the home from basically still had two sisters living in this home and did not find a place for them to live, did not take them anywhere. The guy didn't tell him that the building was falling apart. So he's kind of in a conundrum of what to do. Like, should he sell the place and use the money to do something else? Should he keep the place and try to fix it up and kick them out? So it's basically him trying to decide what he's going to do about this house and what he's going to do about Felicity and May. This book was quite funny. May is so cute, the little sister. She's like 8 years old, and she, after hitting him over the head the first time, just becomes enamored with the idea of hitting people over the head. And taking people out. So she's just really, really cute. But he and Felicity kind of slowly fall for each other. Even though they're living in the same house, they're trying to be appropriate and take their time. It felt like a bit of a small town romance. They were at this house pretty much the entire book, which annoyed me because it starts to make me feel claustrophobic when the characters don't go anywhere. I basically was like, please, can y'all go somewhere other than this house and barn? Because it would be nice to see a different type of scenery. So that was a little annoying for me. The steamy scenes were lame. They were like 2 paragraphs long. That was kind of funny to me. It was kind of slow in the middle of the book. There were parts where it was just them kind of fixing a barn and having a party with the neighbors and stuff like that. But then it really picks up towards the end, and it's what Suzanne Enoch always does, where there's just a very very action-packed ending to the story. So it starts off pretty interesting, slows down, and then gets really, really interesting again and action-packed again towards the end. So this one was good. Like I said, it made me a bit claustrophobic reading this one. It's because they never went anywhere, and that really, really kind of pissed me off. Like I said, I loved May, the little girl. She was just so funny and fun to read about. So yeah, I like this one. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't like it as much as the first book in the series. But I did still enjoy it. And I believe I think I had a quote from this one as well. So she says, "And the kiss?" And he says, "That wasn't a kiss." She says, "Then pray tell." She says, "Then what, pray tell, was it?" "Practice. You'll know when I've kissed you." He intended to kiss her again? Was that a threat or a promise? So the last book that I read in August was The Perils of Pleasure. This is Julianne Long. This is the first book in the Pennyroyal Green series. So this book is about Colin and Madeline, and we have a story about a guy who has been wrongly accused of murder, and the only witness to the crime has disappeared. And so he is basically set to hang, but right before, he's told to trip on stage, and when he does, a whole bunch of bombs go off and he's whisked away. He's saved from being hung, but now he has to figure out what is going on and why he's been saved. The woman who saved him, he ends up saving her from being killed. And so the two of them decide they're going to go on the run together so that he can find out where the witness is for the crime, and she can find out who's trying to kill her now that, the deed has been done. And so they basically go on a road trip together. It's got a one bed trope and all of that fun stuff. This one I ended up giving 5 stars, or sorry. This one I ended up giving 3 stars, mostly because they are on the run for about 4 days and they end up falling in love in 4 days. I really liked Colin. He's a funny guy. Madeline's kind of serious and take no prisoners kind of woman. He happened to be in love with someone else during the book. Like at the beginning of the book, he was in love with a woman from his childhood. And so for him to kind of switch up after 4 days and be like, I'm in love with Madeline now, it was just kind of ridiculous to me. It was like, this is not believable at all. Another thing that, this is just me because I'm weird like that, I couldn't stop thinking about how gross they probably smelled after being on the road for like 4 days and not showering. So even when there was a love scene, I was like, ew. I was like, I don't like the idea of this because they're probably really, really stinky and I just wouldn't. Yeah, so I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I've heard that the Pennyroyal Green series is pretty good, so I'm looking forward to the other books in the series. I have a step back on the back of this one here that I forgot to mention. But yeah, so The Perils of Pleasure. So that's the last book that I read in August. If there are any questions about any of these books that you might have, or if you have read some of these books and you like them more than I did, I feel like I had pretty much all 3.5 stars, with the exception of maybe 1 4-star. So, I won't say it wasn't a good reading month, but it wasn't the greatest reading month. So yeah, there's that. So if you did make it to the end of the video, leave me a bicycle emoji. Just because that's what came up in my head, a bicycle emoji. So yeah, again, leave some comments about any of these books if you've read them and just what your thoughts are. So thanks for watching. Bye.